what you think is the reason why suddenly, after all these years, the House and the Senate in Florida is like, you know what? We're going to stand up to you, Ron DeSantis.
Is it because they support Wilton and not Daddy D?
Well, regardless of who they support, old Daddy D, as you call him, he won't be governor again after this, right?
Right.
He got reelected by huge, 20 points or something like that. But someone's got to be governor next. So now you have to be able to run as probably a Trump Republican. You don't want to be a DeSantis Republican. Maybe you want to be like DeSantis, but you're a Trump Republican because Trump will still be president. And but you need to separate yourself. There'll be somebody, I don't know who yet, but there's gonna be somebody who's basically DeSantis goes, this is my person. This is my heir apparent. I imagine that Wilton Simpson did not think or knows for a fact he's not going to get DeSantis's endorsement and that someone else is, and that his network, they are, like you said, they want Wilton to get elected because he's got positions to fill after that. Bring you up with him. That's the horse you back. Well, so just how about then we think about the claims. One of the things they say, DeSantis goes, this is going to stop things we're doing right now. And they go, nah, it's not going to stop anything. It's not going to stop anything. You still have all your powers. Well, down here on page 82, once the state of emergency expires, he called it a state of emergency over immigration, I believe. Well, once it expires, it can't be renewed, but for early termination would have expired. The governor may not issue a subsequent state of emergency with respect to the same substantially similar issue or circumstance. So they say this emergency order, which don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of calling emergency powers, but one thing this bill does is it says all the emergency orders that DeSantis has in order right now that he's using to do stuff, none of them can be renewed, and he can't do anything on a similar topic, which is immigration. So it literally is taking away his emergency powers on immigration. And I'm fine with challenging the emergency powers of the governor and saying you got no right to them. But that's not what they're saying here. What this bill says is he can't do any more emergency orders, but Wilton Simpson can. And that's where it's squirrely. You go, oh, okay. And it'll take me a while to go through all this to get to the top again. But basically what this bill does is it establishes a Department of Immigration Enforcement at the Department of Agriculture that does not exist. It strips every mention of anything outside the Department of Agriculture communicating with the federal government about immigration issues. It makes Wilton Simpson like the lone person that can talk to the federal government about immigration stuff. He's the only one that can advise on the number of beds available for federal government to use for immigration things. He's the only one. Basically, anything that has to do with immigration has to go through him personally as the new, not only is he the commissioner of agriculture, he's basically the new head of all things immigration. He has a title and everything. Now they say, okay, well you can't get paid to be, but he has a committee. He's got a committee. It's got to have, I think like 20 people. It's gonna be cops and all that, but he can't get paid. But you know what you can have? A staff, travel costs, per diem. Okay. Now, right below where they say all of DeSantis' executive orders cannot be renewed, we have this, Section 45. For the 2024-2025, what year is this, Charlie?
2025.
That's interesting. The sums of $20,562,630 in recurring funds and $484,467,609 in one-time non-recurring funds are appropriated from the General Revenue Fund to the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to implement this act. For those doing the math at home, that is over $500 million, and most of it a one-time expense.
The general revenue fund, is that money even in there?
Oh, we got cash.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's what I'm saying. If I run, we're canceling a lot of taxes because our sales tax cover everything. Like, we could have just in sales tax revenue, which includes tourist tax and all that, we'll have a $1 billion surplus every year. Every year. And so,
That's half of it.
yeah, I know. And even more so since they like vetoed his veto. So
Didn't they say he didn't read the bill?
that's what he said. That's what they said.
Clearly, he's read the bill.
Well, yeah,
if he's worried,
his staff read
or
the
yeah,
bill.
somebody read the bill.
Yeah, but this is the nice thing about state legislation and county to that degree. They give you a bill. Underlined means new. Crossed out means it's been removed. Everything else is what exists today. That's all there is to it. This is 75 pages. It's a lot. I scrolled and I looked for new. And then when there's new stuff, most of the new stuff was just, most of the stuff in this was scratching out the state having a right to do stuff and saying Wilton Simpson does it now. I mean, that's most of this thing. Most of this thing is just Wilton Simpson does this now. Wilton Simpson has a team to do it now, and he can travel to do it now and get reimbursed for his travel to do it now. Wilton Simpson is going to be the immigration god of Florida to the point that maybe he doesn't want to be governor because he won't get to be the immigration god. And guess who? If you are a big sugar, who are you going to pay?
All right. Yep.
I mean, how lucrative.
Interesting.
How lucrative is this? Florida, for those who don't know, Big Sugar is big here. We let them set their fields on fire because it saves them money in clearing their fields, and it just rains ash on all the nice people down in Wellington and Fort Lauderdale area. What is that? West Palm, that whole area. Just we rain down ash on them. We pollute the water. But you know what? Fat envelope full of cash. It all goes away. For anybody not paying attention, America has a little issue with sugar. Let's see some of the money spent on this.
It just says expenses. $3 million, $3.5 million in expenses.
Yeah, they got expenses.
Is that like, was that
Hookers?
hookers?
Cocaine?
Yeah, I was just gonna say like.
Sometimes you have to go to Cafe Risque. I blanked on it. Sometimes you gotta go to Cafe Risque for a nice meeting when you're way from south to north, you know? Just see what it be. Sign up for a...
Well, is that going to be enough then?
I mean, no, probably won't be. Not if you're signing up for the trucker showers, you know? Yeah, so what this also does is it creates a new law enforcement department. And they say it's not new because Department of Agriculture already has law enforcement. Sure, kind of. It's not big. I imagine there's not lots of arrests. I don't think you use your service weapon outside of shooting cans on a fence post too often. I think it's probably a pretty chill law enforcement kind of gig. But now we're building a department. And so he gets to have an army. So we'll have state law enforcement, and we'll have municipal law enforcement, and then we'll have Wilton Simpson's agriculture army. Everyone can read this, but so far, DeSantis is more accurate than Senate and House Majority. From non-recurring, if you remember, that was basically $500 million of one-time expenses. $6 million in acquisitions of motor vehicles, so $6 million in vehicles. $500,000 in acquisitions of boats, motors, and trailers, and then another $500,000 in contracted services. So they get to spend $500,000 on boats. Boats are awesome. I like boats, but Department of Agriculture is about to get a Navy. Let's see what else we got. They're going to hire 142 full-time employees, basically at an average of $60,000 a year. You go, well, that's a lot, but hold on. That's not all. They're also going to get 7 full-time employees that are like at $80,000 a year. $100 million shall be allocated to specific appropriation special category local law enforcement immigration grant program. The amount, $3.75 million, will be released immediately. Just becoming law. They'll be used for administrative costs associated with developing and implementing.
Are you kidding me?
That's $4 million just to come up with a plan to issue grants. The division shall develop an implementation plan, including procedures and administration and criteria. We got procedures, criteria, and we're going to administrate that whole damn thing.
So expensive.
For approving grant applications. I mean, come on, you got to have procedures and criteria. The implementation plan shall be submitted to the President of the Senate. Who used to be the President of the Senate, Charlie?
Was this Wilton? Is this
Wilton.
Wilton.
And so now his homie, who submitted this bill, will have to approve Wilton's expenditures or his implementation plan. So his plan, so Wilton will have a plan he submits to his lackey.
There's no conflict of interest at all.
Yeah, Charlie, you're always so negative. We're trying to get things done. Trying to screw the Mexicans here, Charlie. Come on. Trying to steal our country, take our jobs. Let's see what else we got. $375 million should be allocated to specific appropriation of implementation and support of enforcement of federal immigration policies. Okay, to be implement whatever. Break it down for me somewhere. You're not going to break this one down. It's just $375 million that just goes to whatever. Support federal access to training facilities. Grants to local law enforcement to retain existing law enforcement officers, to retain or attract new officers, and grants to pay costs incurred by local law enforcement that were necessary for full support of this thing. Always so necessary. The Chief Immigration Officer, that's what he'd be called, the Chief Immigration Officer. He'd have a new title.
CIO.
Yep. When deemed necessary to respond to immigration-related emergencies, shall request assistance from the governor for the activation and deployment of the Florida National Guard. He is able to call the National Guard. He's allowed to get the governor to deploy the National Guard. I missed this earlier. I was on the phone with this woman who was telling me about Walmart, and I just needed an insurance certificate issued. I had 45 minutes of what it's like to try and do a return to Walmart.com. It's not easy. That's all I'm saying. It's not easy. Anyway, yeah, the Chief Immigration Officer can call out the National Guard. That's not his job. Like, beef about powers that people have, but you just can't give new people governor powers, like executive powers. That's just not their job.
Yeah, what farm needs the National Guard?
Yeah. Listen, it's for agriculture.
Right.
Let's see. During the declared state of emergency for illegal immigration, the Chief Immigration Officer shall coordinate with and advise the state. There it is. Shall coordinate with and advise state and local law enforcement agencies for the purpose of securing compliance with this chapter. So, like, it's authorizing Wilton Simpson to control, like. But what do you say?
All emergency declarations and orders, regardless of how titled.
Okay.
So you can make it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can title it however you want to. You can go, it's a... Oh, you know what that means, though? You could say it's an emergency, a hurricane emergency, but it's also an immigration. Just because it's titled Hurricane Emergency Relief doesn't mean it's not an immigration emergency order. Wow. So one of the things that's in here is if you vote illegally or you try to conspire to help someone else vote illegally, like you're an illegal alien and you vote, or you help an illegal alien to vote, it ups the charges on it. But DeSantis is right. They do not make it illegal to register to vote. Right. This is the Trump bill. They call it that so that all the Republicans can say, I voted for the Trump bill. You know, it's cover. And it's, I think it's Wilton Simpson, because there's, people have been going after him on the Twitters, which has been lovely. And so he was like, whatever, you ran against him for president. I didn't try to do that. I support Donald Trump. You try to be president, not have him be president. And you're like, all right, But obviously, this should not become law. We cannot authorize the Department of Agriculture to be the immigration god with a full military enforcement arm.
And giving him $500 million.
That's just in the one time.
Right.
It's just the one
right.
time.
That's
There's
right.
$20 million a year on top of that for now until they appropriate more money. The amount of control Sugar will have over the state when they're able to have, because, all right, say Wilton leaves. Say Wilton's a good guy. Let's say he's a good guy. And he becomes governor, so now he doesn't have the power. He's just one of those sickly ass governors in there. Well, the next guy, like, if you're running, so local elections, state elections are cheaper than federal, right? If you're trying to buy a politician, why buy the governor when you buy the commissioner of agriculture? Put in however much money you got to. And it's just like, now you can have as many illegals as you want. Like, you can do, like, you own law enforcement for the whole state. Like, you have everything. And, when the federal government comes, you go, talk to my guy. He says we don't have any beds available. He says there's no beds available. Sorry, we got sugar cane to cut, It is truly nuts. If you enjoyed that segment from the Loaded Talk podcast, please click below for the full episode and consider liking and subscribing. As always, you can go to loadedtalk.com to follow all things Loaded Talk.